Hello and welcome to
The relationship guys. How are you
this
doing
is
today, Michael?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing, Justin?
I'm doing great. So, what episode is this for us?
This is episode deux.
Duh, two.
Deux.
Okay.
Hush, hush. We don't want the
Dose.
voters to know.
Dose. That's right. That's right. And so, welcome everybody to our second episode. And this is the Relationship Guys podcast. And this is where we talk about the astrology of sex, friendship, and coupledom. And so, Michael, what couple are we going to look at today? Are we going to go where astrologers fear to tread? Go. Yes.
We are going to break down the relationship of Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump.
And the reason why I kind of, Michael, we got to talk about this a little bit. The reason why I think we kind of went with this a little bit was that these two charts are really great examples. If you want to understand how people can have that interplay and complexity in relationship, there's some really awesome things between their two charts that are really like really show you, and good learning points about how to understand synastry and relationship.
Very well
You know,
stated. And it's funny, I went and did the the AI imagery, and it was really hard to get the wording in there. If I put in hush money, politician,
oh
it
my
came
god.
back basically with like a forbidden thing saying, sorry, you're asking for something really inappropriate. So I had to like kind of keep playing with it until it finally gave me these
well,
images.
well, well. Maybe we're gonna find out whether this relationship's in or out, and where the appropriateness and boundaries are. So starting, Michael, we like to talk about what planets we look at, right?
Definitely. And actually, what's I think really important to understand with planets in astrology, they have something just like we do. They represent our needs. Each planet has a planetary need that is kind of seeking for each of us to be realized.
Yeah,
So the first one we have is
the sun. And the sun kind of basically represents that core of our personality, and how, like you said, to shine, how we shine out in the world.
and the moon represents how we feel, how we need to be nurtured, kind of like our emotional nature, how we're going to approach things from an emotional standpoint.
Exactly. And then Mercury, planet of communication, shows how we communicate, how we think. And this is an important one we'll actually be looking at today.
Very much so. And also movement, to be honest. And that's an aspect, it's kind
Yep.
of an integrated part with Mercury that you can see.
Yep.
Venus, of course, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, represents our values. What are we loyal to? What do we think? What do we find important and we pledge our allegiance to in life, so to speak?
Right. And how we also reflect, how we show affections to others.
Good
And
point.
then, of course, our next one is Mars. And Mars is the planet of how we move forward in our life, how we think, or how we take effort and action. It's the desire to go after things. So if let's say Mars is in a water sign, then a person's going to go, more about their intuition before they take action, versus a person that has it in Virgo, or a Earth sign may be much more logical and rational and analytical before they take action. So we're definitely going to look at their Mars today.
Definitely. And the Venus and Mars also in the individual chart basically sort of represent the masculine and feminine, masculine being Mars and Venus being the feminine aspect, and also what they're
Yeah.
most likely to be drawn to. And so relationships between those two planets kind of show for heterosexual couples, especially what that kind of play of the masculine and feminine are going to be like. Jupiter, of
Mm-hmm.
course, aggrandizement, to believe, to have faith, to grow and expand. It's our ability to have belief and faith in another human being to be like, hey, you know what? I think we can create a relationship here.
Yep. And then the next one we look at is Saturn, which is a planet of limitations, discipline, boundaries. And of course, this is a one that is very important to look at with relationships, especially, when, let's say, we have any planets that are squaring Saturn. That's a big red flag. Red flag, folks. Mars squares Saturn, Mercury squares Saturn. Those things we need to look at.
We do. And Uranus, is interesting enough, is the planet that seeks freedom, how we seek change. And it's one of those aspects in relationship that I believe is very rarely looked at. Whenever I do relationship charts, I love to delve into the Uranian realm because it's one of those areas where each individual needs to seek their freedom and be their unique self. And if the other partner can't really accept them in that way, it can really create quite a challenge within the relationship.
Yeah. And then the next one we look at is Neptune, and Neptune is that collective planet, represents the collective, how we relate to the collective and whatever sign or house is it in. And so this was also one we'll be looking at today because this does figure prominently between their charts. And so Neptune, that planet of our dreams and our, our spiritual self, and a lot of times it's important to look at it how each of them could actually help each other or not help each other within the collective based on aspects to their Neptune.
Definitely. And Pluto, god of the underworld, of course, is going to be up to death and destruction and transformation, but also can represent power plays within a relationship. So that's another area we want to make sure, is Pluto squaring another person's Pluto, or a Mars Pluto square, or a Mars Pluto opposition. We can tell that they're going to be very feisty. There's going to be some arguments going on. But in the long run, if you can actually address these issues and transform them, it really can lead the way for a more deeply meaningful relationship. All these planets, when we step in from, I would say, from Uranus outward into these outer realms, the more that one is, first of all, older, because it takes a while to integrate these energies, and when we're young, it's I think kind of an impossibility. And then the other thing is incorporating them within the relationship and discussing them and working with them in such a way so that we could actually step into larger areas of ourselves and larger areas of awareness.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And then the next planetoid we look at is Chiron. Of course, Chiron is a minor planet and has recently actually been considered by the scientific community sort of the nucleus of a comet. It actually has some aspects of a comet. Chiron in Greek mythology was the centaur who was adept in the medical and medicinal arts. And so Chiron represents one's wound in the chart for us, and so it has that aspect of where one's wound in life is, whatever sign and house it's in. And it's also unconventional. It's where we have to step outside the flow of everybody else and be different. And so this is really important to look at in charts and what planets are aspecting. Is this person going to trigger your Chiron, or are they going to heal your Chiron?
Definitely. And I think you're much more of an expert in with Eros and Nessus. So if you'd like to take that over, I'd
Oh,
appreciate
sure. Yeah,
that.
so Eros is Cupid in the chart, shows how we, Venus shows affections, but Eros shows what we look for in, and how we could express our emotional love and what we look for in relationship. And so it's what we seek in love, and we're going to definitely be looking at this one today. And then Nessus, it's what needs to be healed in a relationship. This is also one of the centaurs, by the way, along with Pholos, Nessus and Pholos, and Chiron were considered the more educated centaurs, and Nessus, of course, this really sort of a dark Greek mythology around rape and some other things there. But so it really can represent in the chart abuse and also what we need to heal in a relationship. And again, important to see what planets are triggering this. And then, of course, the last one we look at is Juno, and Juno was the wife of Jupiter, represents relationship and marriage. And so it's always kind of important as we look at Juno, Eros, and Venus, kind of all those kind of represent sort of what a person needs in a relationship, right,
Perfect.
Michael?
And yeah, yes, definitely. Beautiful way of reviewing these. So please feel free to, pause here, take a look at this when, as we're talking, kind of go back to this point. We'll put a marker here for it to be found pretty easily. And so I believe we will begin with Miss Stormy
Drum
Daniels. Dun,
drum
da, da,
roll, yes.
da,
I'll let
from
you go
Baton
first.
Rouge,
Yes,
Louisiana,
yes.
Sagittarius rising.
Yeah, and we have a good time for this too. It has an A rating, Rodham rating. So this comes from her birth chart. This is a good time. So
And
what
for
do you
those
where
people
do
who
you want
don't
to
know
start?
what a Rodham rating is, would you like to explain?
Well, those are it's like a triple A. It's based on the accuracy of information around a person's birth time and where it came from. So, so where do you want to start with this chart, Michael? I'll let you
Well,
start.
I already feel a nice kinship with it. I mean, she's got a Scorpio moon like me and a Sagittarius rising. So I know right away, I can see why she would be going after Trump. And Pluto, I mean, hello, Pluto on the midheaven. Me as an angle person, as you know, I mean, this is a person who, um, what I like the combination with Pluto and Scorpio and with Libra and Scorpio is sort of this steel hand in a velvet glove.
Oh yeah.
And this, it's not, I like to say with Scorpio, we don't get mad, we get even. And it's really about getting you to feel what we have felt. So in those places where, especially because Scorpio is the realm of shame and humiliation, and so what is it she's claiming? And also, she's as a Plutonian in Libra retrograde, she's here to show there's a way to reclaim our relationship, masculine and feminine, and to be empowered, to be self-empowered first, is what I would say, without Pluto being retrograde. And with that
Yeah.
moon, those top being up there, that Scorpio moon with that Pluto up there, I mean, that is really, um, it's okay, honey. Like some of my lady friends back in the day, some of my black friends, they'd say the joke was with their husbands, if they, or boyfriends, if they did anything nasty with them, they say, it's okay, honey, you got to go to sleep sometime.
Right. Well, you know what I love about the chart is all what we see in the third house there. Of course, she's a Pisces. She's got Sun in Pisces, Juno in Pisces, her South Node in Pisces, and the Mars in Pisces. So she is a really compassionate, empathetic personality. That's that velvet glove that you're talking about there. And, so she definitely, as we talk about, she actually bases a lot when she takes action based on her feelings. She's got Mars there, and also she has Juno next to her Sun, so there is a little bit of that. Pisces is very creative and very imaginative, and of course we saw this with some other aspects in her chart. She's very creative personality, so she does have sort of this um, uh, imagination of what she wants in relationships, and she's got Jupiter in Cancer, so this means that she grows through this concept of family. However, I might notice she's got Jupiter retrograding, which means she's a late bloomer in life, and that's also why we're seeing her at this point in her life kind of being up on stage. And I might also notice that she has Eros in Capricorn, and so she does like stability in relationships, and relationships, and she can be very loyal in a relationship, right? Yep, money, yep. And so there is that. She likes those stable relationships. However, her Chiron is in Taurus, so and it's opposing her Scorpio moon, so she's definitely working through some how do you want to say, difficult emotions in relationships. And that Chiron in Taurus, it has that wound of neglect. And so anything of where in a relationship they are physical is actually can be healing to her. And we'll actually talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a grand cross when you bring in the moon, Jupiter, Chiron, and Eros. So you can see, I mean, big feelings, big issues around being. And it's interesting because who did we have last week? We had Megan with the Chiron and Taurus as well, right? This need for
Right.
contact, need for touch. I love that Jupiter and Cancer, even though it's retrograde, it's trining that sun, it's trining
Mm-hmm.
Juno, it's trining Pholus.
Yeah.
It's in a wide trine with that Uranus kind of creating a grand trine, I would say, so to speak, in,
Yeah.
in that department.
Yeah.
And and then yeah, that and then the Venus in Aquarius. What a wonderful way to what I love about the air signs is their ability to rise above. I think Libra and especially Aquarius more so. I don't think Gemini has as much of this ability, but that Venus has that ability to go like, huh, tied in, especially I think with that Saturn, both are Saturn ruled with that Eros Capricorn,
Mm-hmm.
um, gives that need for structure and taking a moment, taking a step back and seeing like, is this what I want? Is this how I want it?
Right, right. And
And Saturn, oh, sorry. I was going to just
no,
one more
go
thing
ahead.
is
No,
that
go ahead.
Saturn conjunct her North Node in Virgo. I mean, it's a wide conjunction, but it's really like that's her landing place. It reinforces that Sagittarian energy. It's even though it's a wide square to it, it's feeding into that and saying, hey, what do we need to do to get things done? She's not afraid to work, right?
No, exactly. Oh yeah, no. Saturn and Virgo, yeah. She wants to know all the facts. She's very on point about things. Very smart cookie here.
Yeah.
And I want to mention that Pluto and Libra in her 10th house. Of course, this, Pluto's about the planet of death and rebirth and non-attachment. So she's going to go through this sort of impermanence of relationships because it's in the sign of Libra in her career. So she has a dynamic life where she's going to go through more than one career in her life, and she's learning to let go of relationships there. And, you know, so I'll just stop right there because I want to tell you a couple of very important things about her transits when you're ready.
Go
So
for it.
anything else?
I was
Okay,
just the
well,
only other thing I would say in that is that Venus is also trining that Pluto. So I mean, she's got a lot of really, I mean, life has not been easy for her, but I bet that each time she has met her challenges in life, she gets ka-ching, she gets rewarded. That's like the feeling gets to me. So she's learned like I can take the easy route and not get anything, or I can take the hard route and know I'm going to get something. And I think she's not afraid that, especially that Sagittarius rising, because it's like, hey, it's all going to be fine anyway.
right, right. And I love how, again, Neptune is close to the ascendant there. That's auspicious.
Yes.
And of course, Jupiter with in the seventh house, I think, is also auspicious there. She does have Nessus there. So
Yeah.
again, as we're talking about that thing to heal in relationships, she does have an emotional thing, Nessus in Cancer, Moon in Scorpio,
Yeah.
Juno in Pisces, conjunct her sun, and Pholus is there. She definitely, there's a big water thing going on with
Yeah.
emotions and relationships here, but she's super intuitive and creative.
Yeah, because her only fire is that Mercury and her Neptune. That's her only two fire planets.
And I was going to say, so about her transits and why we
Yes.
see this coming up right now. So first of all, her progressed moon is in Cancer. Okay. And so that's going through her seventh house of relationships right now. So she's dealing with relationships. And her perfections is 10th house. And that's also where the South Node is going over her Pluto during this point in time. So she's having, when the South Node, that Ketu, it brings change as like an auger, and so this is bringing change in her career. This She's dealing with relationships this year, so she's definitely dealing with a lot of relationship and career stuff at this particular point in her life, which is actually could be very good for her.
Great. Anything else on transits?
No, I that's all I
Okay.
would say.
Okay. I mean, we can spend time going over his. I mean, I don't know how much we should go over it because everyone's gone over this chart so many times. But I mean, again, we've got, angular placement. I mean, here we have, she has Pluto on her midheaven. Here we have Mars on the ascendant. So we already
Yeah,
know that there's a way. I don't know about you, but I also look at how each person responds to their angles. Like if you're in a relationship and you have a person who has Mars on their midheaven and the other person has Mars on their IC, regardless of what their signs are, they're having very different approaches to their Mars energy.
yeah. Yeah, well, I'll talk about their synastry here in a minute, but I want to kind of point out a couple of things about his
Yes.
chart and why in this lifetime he always conquers. And one of the things is he's unique in that he was actually born on a lunar eclipse. We see the sun on the north node, Rahu there, and we see the sun on the south node, Ketu. He was actually born on a lunar eclipse. So I'm just going to leave that right there for you. That's pretty dynamic. If
That's
we go
dynamic
back,
in and of its own right if we don't add even other
oh,
things that also multiply
absolutely.
this. feature. Yeah.
And the fact that it's a lunar eclipse where the Earth sees its shadow, and not a solar eclipse, that's a whole nother story, which we can do maybe in another
Yeah, and what
show.
has he been doing for us what has he been doing for the United States
Right,
since he became a politician?
right. And
Showing our
so,
shadow.
right, well,
Yeah.
Deepak Chopra talked about that as well. So if we look at a couple things around relationship, of course, he has his Eros in Taurus. So he does have a physicality thing that he does, that that he's definitely physical with people, and wants that in a relationship. And then of course, his Juno is in Libra next to his Chiron. And so this on its own means he's going to have issues with relationships in his life, and it's in the second house. And if we look at his Jyotish chart, I know we don't see it here, but did look at this. He does have this financial thing, even in the Vedic Jyotish chart, around relationships. That's why a lot of times we see there's a transactional thing going on with him. Like he offered her a spot on The Apprentice, but he never really eventually came through with that. So he has a very financial transactional thing going on. Of course, it's in the second house of money, values, resources. But because he has Chiron there, he goes through he has issues with relationships.
It's bipolar.
And he's got Jupiter retrograding there. So again, he's also a late bloomer in life. Of course, he became president later in life. But it's again, he has a lot of stuff going on, relationships that he's having to deal with in his life there.
Yeah, and
You
I
know?
would think too with this Nessus and the Eros here in Taurus, what I find that can happen with Taurus is that it can suffer from me, mine, mineitis. So it has this idea that it owns. And there is a little bit of I mean, he's married women who have come from other countries. There's a control aspect to it. Taurus is a fixed sign. It likes to have control. It likes to know how things are done. So I would think that this is, another kind of an indicator. And what was that interview? Something that since he's a star, he can grab women's parts.
Right, that Nessos, the abuse, and Taurus, right, the abuse of physicality or using money. That's the other thing too. That Nessos and Taurus can be a person that uses money towards a weapon or a control.
Right.
To his transits. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to
I was
say?
just going to say, which also speaks to the Saturn Venus, the controlling, the
Oh,
controlling aspect with the family, that father of his who, kind of in a way actually makes Trump look like a nice person. I mean, those old school like him, Trump's father, Leona Helmsley, those old school Manhattan landlords were made of something. But and you were gonna
right.
go said you were gonna say something?
Well, no, no. You know, um, I'll say one thing about his nodes also, because in the Jyotish chart, um, he does have this attack and defend type of personality with the particular nakshatras or lunar mansions that those his sun and moon are in. Whereas with her nakshatras or lunar mansions with her nodes is all about being creative and healing. His is about attack and defend. With transits, oh my goodness, this is for him. Of course, he's got, as far as transits, he's got that. We were talking about the South Node currently in Libra. It's going right over his Chiron and Juno, and so this is why again he's lost money, second house, related to a relationship, Carol, and now he's lost a lot of money right now because of course that Chiron's being triggered and Juno being triggered in the second half.
The big fine for the fraud for
Yeah,
misrepresenting the value of his properties. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, because
absolutely.
Neptune's there too. I mean, the other thing is
Yeah,
like he's probably not really clear in his own head what his value is. He
that I
doesn't want to have a
agree.
clear answer in
Yeah,
that kind of a sense. And
I agree.
and on certain levels, I mean, it's odd because people after a certain level of money don't talk about your money.
but he's going to. He has. This was the other thing. This is the other thing, that Mars in Leo, right there in the 12th house. Now, in the Jonas chart, this in the lunar mansion, it shows a person. Uh, Forget the house for a second. That Mars is at a degree where a person, a more mature Leo. He's supposed to not be arrogant or have ego issues, but because this Mars shows up in his 12th house, the house of one's undoing and challenges, this is where he's the opposite of that, where that ego presents itself. And back to the Chiron for a second. He's also having a Chiron opposition right now. So,
Right.
because Chiron's in Aries,
Yep.
opposing his natal Chiron, and of course, Hygeia, this other asteroid, is up there too. He's really having to deal with that self and relationships right now, having a Chiron, transiting Chiron, opposing his natal Chiron.
Another thing I would say with that Mars there, the other planet that's involved in that mix is the fixed star Regulus, which is the
Mm,
star of kings. I mean, so there is a way, and you can see it. There's just a way that he goes about doing things. It's almost along the lines of an old school king. Like when we
mm-hmm.
talk about Louis the 14th, l'état c'est moi, the estate is me. And at a certain level, he's this same way. Certain leaders, and especially with this, and also his alignments with the chart of the United States, because when we talk about this moon sun opposition and his nodes, this is the Sibley chart for the United States
Yeah,
for the ascendant descendant. So we can
yeah.
immediately see the alignment with this. He's been great. If anything, I mean, what I've noticed about it, because people are like, how do you explain this? All my spiritual friends, how and none of the
He was
Western
meant to be.
astrologers really got him. The truth is he's come along to basically say that the emperor's wearing no clothes, about how our democracy works. It's a series
Right,
of really, it's an honor system to speak of, and he's shown how much someone without the appropriate level of honor can go astray, shall we say.
right. Well, he was destined to be president. I mean, the lunar eclipse, and he's all these positive alignments. And I might say also, I don't want to get too much intellectual, because I might say you and I got this coming up later on.
Yes.
Just to put a little ticker out there, you and I are going to be talking about this later this year, about our election stuff. So people tune into those
Talk
videos. But
Cosmos. Yep.
but he does have some major positive transits this year with Mars and Jupiter and Gemini, that's going to be going over his north node. But we'll talk about that another time, right?
Definitely,
So,
definitely. So this is one of the ones I finally was able to get as a visual for the AI. So of course, we're going to look at relationships in three different ways. The first step we're going to look at is the comparison or synastry, which is just simply looking at the two charts next to one another. So do you want to start on this one? We have
I'm going to
Stormy
wait
on the
till we get to
left.
the synastry slide.
Okay,
You're pretty
okay,
good with the comparison here.
okay.
Anything that jumps out with you here?
I mean, I kind of like to look at hemispheric things, but I look at and I see both of them is that these two individuals are basically have what I would say splayed charts, meaning that they have something kind of going on in almost every single one of the houses or the signs. So this sometimes we would call these people a jack of all trades, but a master of none. But I think sometimes that can
Yeah.
belittle actually where they can actually specialize. What I find very fascinating for both of them is they're basically having, sort of an empty sixth house sort of an area. So if anything, that's probably the like the emptiest spot for both of them. So the idea of daily service and work and those sorts of things isn't really that much of a process for them. She definitely has a loaded third house. He brings in fills in a lot of this upper area. I mean, I think they speak to a lot, especially when we get in and we speak to the. I want to go on to the next ones too, because I think it's where the more juicy
Oh,
aspects are.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna bring out our guns now, because this is
That's
actually really, you
right.
can see like how it all like plays out,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how I mean, what I love about the synastry chart is that it shows, especially like in these places, like if we look here with Donald's here in the inner and Stormy's on the outer, like Jupiter Venus right away, like it is like right away, that's a love contact. I mean, that's going to be a way that you can see that there's an immediate connection, and it would be kind of hard to not, and it's water, but he's got his
Right.
Saturn here, so there's like he's always kind of scheme. He's got ideas in his mind about what he's doing.
Right.
Oh, sorry, that's
However,
her.
however, let's
Yeah.
look at Mercury. Their Mercuries are squared, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
for the audience, if you've got Mercury squared between two people, Mercury, the planet of communications, this means they're definitely going to argue. They're going to see, they're going to think differently. They're going to have different ideas. And so, so she's got Mercury retrograding in Aries. So there's a little bit of an edit function there for her, or second guessing things. And he's got Mercury in Cancer. And I might also mention in his natal chart, Mercury squares his Chiron and his Juno. So this, in essence, means her Mercury squares not only his Mercury, his planet of communications, his thinking, but also squares his Chiron and Juno. It's like this is a relationship where they're they're on two different um, wavelengths here as far as relationship. It's kind of like I was looking at earlier. There's a couple other things like they're he's here and they're not coming together. What do you
Yeah.
think about that square?
Their suns are squaring as well.
Mm-hmm. And his
So
Mercury squares, and the suns are squared. The suns are squared, which means so there's some dynamics of they shine differently. This can mean like who's up on stage first, and then of course I'm back to the Mercury's for a second. His Mercury squares her Chiron in Taurus, so we've got the Mercury squaring each other's Chirons, the wounds.
yeah, and just to clarify this, it says inner wheel here on the left is Donald Trump, but clearly the inner wheel is Stormy with Donald on the outside, and the outer wheel
Mm,
it says is Donald Trump here, but it's actually clearly Stormy on the outer wheel and Donald on the inside. So just to clarify
yeah,
that, so please ignore that part of it. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
think that's those sorts of things, and then a Moon Neptune combination. That's another merging part, and
that's a
Jupiter
positive thing.
Moon. That's a really
Yeah.
positive thing. Chiron Pluto, to be honest,
Mm-mm.
is a friend of mine talk. I don't know if you've heard this, but a friend of mine talks about these. They're called golden aspects. And whenever there are conjunctions between Pluto, Chiron, Venus, or Jupiter, there is basically an unconditional love element.
Yeah, but I'm gonna
Not
go.
here.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here
Yes.
because his Pluto squares her moon. His Pluto squares her moon. So that's an issue. And back to what I was saying before about how they just see romantic or erotic love differently. His Venus opposes her Eros. His Venus opposes her Eros. So there's like they're it's like they're going in different directions here.
And
You know.
remember when I talked about the oh my gosh, I just lost it. What was the part I was going to say? Oh, the Uranus. Their Uranuses are in conjunct one another, so they have very different. He's got a Uranus in Gemini. She's got a Uranus in Scorpio. Very different ways they're going about shock and change. And what is she known for actually with her work, right? I mean, that to be honest, I would think is a Uranus in Scorpio, Pluto
Oh yeah.
in Libra, Moon in Scorpio, Neptune in Sagittarius in the 12th house, Venus in Aquarius, all that Pisces. I mean, if she wasn't going to be an adult performer, I think she could have been probably someone who could have been
Absolutely.
a healer, a sexual healer, or even a
Absolutely.
dominatrix, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Actually, that actually comes out in her really the more how do you want to say the more relationship and dealing with sex and partners really comes out strongly in her Jyotish Vedic chart. I know we don't have time to get into
Interesting.
it, but she
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
You're spot on with that. That comes out really, really strongly. I think it's also important to, if we're talking about again this wound to her Chiron and Taurus there, that actually you're mentioning it that Nessus is right on her Chiron and so also Eros is there. So in a in another world, I mean, he could help heal her Chiron, but because the Nessus is there, this is, I see, like he was using that, dangling that carrot. Oh, I'll get you on The Apprentice, using that money, values, resources, money. Oh, let's meet again, and I'll get you on The Apprentice. So that's that abuse aspect of Nessus right on her Chiron, and of course he played with the wrong person, Scorpio moon, opposing his Eros. What do you think about that?
Yeah, just
What do
I
you
mean
think
the
about
hard
that?
part
That
is,
Scorpio moon.
well, I mean, especially because this is touching on old wounds for her. I mean, like what he played, I mean, with
Yeah.
that Nessus and his Eros there, like he just, I mean, this is where sometimes where you look at it and you just kind of like go, oh, I mean, if this couple was to come into me, I'd say, it can be fun. You got, but in the long run, if you, and also just knowing what he's like, he doesn't have the consciousness, he doesn't have the empathy and compassion to come forward in a way to meaningfully, I think, hold that earthly Taurian space that could say, hey, you know what, you're okay. He's
Right.
much more like, I'm, this is my way or the highway. It's just her
Right.
describing, I know just a few little bits, sundry bits I heard from the court case about, she turned around and basically he's on the bed, kind of naked and like
Oh
posing.
God.
And it's like, oh, there goes my breakfast. And maybe last night's dinner
Right.
too.
Yeah. No.
I don't think anything's left after those kind of dry heaves.
No. Well, yeah. Again, their suns are squared. His moon squares her sun. There's a lot of squares in the chart that are like
And that sensitivity of Pisces and that Scorpio moon sensitivity, he doesn't have the grace to be sensitive. He's not,
no,
his chart is not about sensitivity. His chart,
no.
he's a bull in a china cabinet,
Yep.
to be
I
honest. And
agree.
that's what his purpose
Agree.
is. And he's really great at doing that. But I mean, being subtle, being soft, being gentle. He was
Oh,
raised by his father was a really brutal, sadistic
yeah.
narcissist. I mean,
Yeah.
who
Well,
even knows? I mean, not that it
yeah.
gives any rationale for how he is, but it's just like, especially at this age, you can grow and have some, get some therapy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So you want to go on to the next one?
Yep. I'm ready. There we go. So the second type of looking at charts are,
Composite midpoint. It's the chart of relationship, and it's by taking the mathematical points between each of the person's planets and points in the chart and combining them. It's basically if you know in a how you want to say in a perfect world, this is the combination of personalities if you combine them together and how they would act together as one personality. So what jumps out with you here, Michael?
I'm sorry.
I said, what jumps out with you here on this chart?
Um, just that strong, I mean, that very late degree ascendant Libra, 28 degrees in learning, 28 degree Scorpio moon.
Hmm.
Not, and then that Venus Sun conjunction in Taurus.
Yeah.
What's it? Oh, and then yeah, I mean, sorry, the cameras were showing up right covering. I always got to be careful where the cameras are covering parts of the chart because it was covering that top part. Yeah, look at that North Node, Saturn, midheaven in Leo, Chiron, right up there for the world to see, right?
Right.
And the Jupiter Pluto combination of the sordid details.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also interesting when you look at this composite chart that the sun is in the seventh house of relationship. This is two personalities that are, as we've already talked about, great couple to look at because they are really dealing with relationships in their life. And together, composite chart, sun in the seventh house means dealing with relationship, and it's conjunct that Venus, so that Gemini and Pisces together becomes a Taurus with Venus there and Mercury there. So they're learning to be more contemplative about relationships. And because that Mercury, again, opposes that Scorpio moon, there's this one is really having to deal with communications and relationships because the Nessus is with the Mars and Gemini. And so, yeah, there's a lot to deal with communications in between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, this would be a very I mean, in a way, though, probably if he was a little bit lighter, a bit lighter and younger, I mean, they could have maybe taken the show on the road, so to speak.
Yeah,
Fifth
yeah.
house Vesta with Eros in, in the fifth house for that creativity and sharing with it. But yeah, this is just not
Again, and look at that, the Chirons in Cancer. So together, together as a single personality. Again, it's all about how they're seeing emotions and relationships, right?
right, and taking and
And healing that.
healing those earlier parts. But again, each of the things always it takes consciousness to work with
Yeah,
things on these certain levels. And as we say in astrology, we never know what the consciousness is of a chart because we don't know whether the chart's, the beginning of a relationship,
right,
as a person, as an animal, a building. But with these sorts of
right.
things, you can kind of look at it and you can kind of say, like, okay, if this again, like if they were to come to me, I would be starting to say it's a possible relationship, but it's not going to be an easy one. It's going to really take
No,
a level of dedication and hard work
yeah,
that to be honest, very few people have.
yeah. They could be super creative together. I mean, this is a
Yes.
power. They could
Yes.
be a powerhouse couple, just like we were talking about Harry and Meghan. This could be a powerhouse
Yep.
couple. But the
Yep.
problem is in the bedroom. The problem is is this romantic or is just for sex, right? I mean, they're
Right.
on two different levels there.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
Nessus and Mars are conjunct in Gemini. I mean, my sense too is that I don't know about you, but what that strikes me right away is infidelity.
yeah,
I don't know why,
yeah,
but that just like immediately strikes me as there will be infidelity.
yeah,
Even with all this Taurus, it says like, no, our love is monogamous. You're mine, I'm yours. That would be like the talk of it. But with the ideal, I mean, a 28-degree Libra rising for the ascendant, and right close to that Scorpio vortex and Neptune. I mean, whatever did happen would also come to light, especially
right.
with that Saturn up in the midheaven and
Well,
that
and then
North
if
Node.
we look at if we look at this particular time and place, her perfections is 10th house. His actually, I forgot to mention his perfections right now is 7th house, and so we see when their relationship together in this chart. There's a big focus on 7th and 10th house right now. They're coming together at this point in time. They are affecting each other's careers and each other's relationships at some level.
And yeah, also I just realized that Uranus and Jupiter and
Mm,
really for the most part with the Pluto come in, and that's trining that Venus and the Sun in Taurus. So it's not going to be um it's not going to be that steady, dependable pace that Taurus would like to have.
no, no, not with Uranus, the planet of rebellion, revolution, and change, trining the sun. No,
No,
this
yeah,
again. I'm starting to think: are they in? Or are they out? I've already kind of made up my mind, but let's look at the Davidson chart.
definitely. All right. So the third way, as you know, is the Davison chart, aka a time and space. So we just talked about the midpoint, which is where we take each of the planets and we take the point in between where each of those planets are for the two individuals, and that's the midpoint chart. This is doing that, but also putting it in between by time between the birth dates of the individuals and space where they were each born. And what's really lovely about this type of chart is you can actually fast forward it, and this might be something we might want to do in the future, is actually do a transit to their Davison chart to show
Yeah,
the point, because just to really illustrate that, I think that'd be a fun thing to do next time. And again, we're going to ask again anyway, but please feel free to offer your chart. We can change names.
yep.
We can put anything up. As you can see, this is a lot of fun for us. You might get some insights on how to be in relationship with one another, or you might decide
Exactly.
like he's out or she's out.
Yeah, should I marry this person or what?
Right.
What am I learning
Should I
in this
marry this
relationship?
person? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So here we have the Davison. Um, so the thing that jumps out to me again here with this, I always love to go back to the Scorpio. Again, we see a Scorpio moon here, Scorpio conjunct Venus there, and you notice in the composite chart, the moon was also in Scorpio in the second house. And again, the second house is taking a lot of informing us a lot. That's where his Chiron's at. There's a lot about money and what the other person's value the other person brings to the relationship, and how are we using money or resources in a relationship, you know. What do you think
Yeah.
about that? This is a Scorpio here. What do you think about this? This is a Scorpio personality.
Yeah, this definitely, after seeing the first chart, the midpoint chart, and then seeing this chart, I just have to say this is going to be work. There's really literally Jupiter with conjunct Chiron and Pisces, the feeling is going to be so amplified. If they can be worked with and dealt with, it could be really great. But then here we go again. We no longer have the midheaven in Leo, but it's just moved just 1 degree over into Cancer, but we've got the North Node and Mars in Leo. So it repeats his pattern of willfulness and entitlement, to be honest, in a certain level. I have Mars on my midheaven, and I think Mars in the midheaven, if we look at simply what the glyph is like, it's an arrow out from the circle. So Mars is really great at inserting itself. It pushes the boundaries. It's always like pushing, pushing, pushing. And so this would
Right.
be sort of a relentless sort of an energy that's going on. Again, late degree, only 20, well, almost 26 degrees for the rising in Libra, but the Mercury's in the 12th house.
Hmm.
And the
Well,
sun is conjunct Neptune. So, this is not going to be, it's going to be hard to really nail things clearly, is what I would think. It'd be, go ahead.
yeah, and I was going to say that Chiron and Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. When Chiron's in Pisces, it's about mental health here, because it's the 12th house. So I see that this relationship is supposed to again heal some type of way they are mentally they're thinking about relationship, and it goes because the sun's in the first house, it's about transformation itself. I might also point out I'm going to just tell you something that's really quite amazing about this Davidson chart, that this, because the Saturn is on the south node and Aquarius, this is an aspect of past life. Karma coming in from past life. As astrologers, we look at planets that are conjunct the nodes, and with Saturn on the south node, this means they're having a do-over in this lifetime. This means that these two have this is not their first go round together in a relationship or together. This is karma coming from a past life. Saturn on the south node, it means that they're getting a do-over. If you have Saturn on the south node, it means that you came back to master something or to get better at something. You're reliving a past life over again with Saturn on the south node, and it's in Aquarius, which means this is long life. This is something continuing. I would also say there's a father aspect that comes into play between these two individuals, but that's for another time. And then I think what really also jumps out with me here is that ultimately, because Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, is next to Juno, relationship, and Virgo needs to purify, heal, cleanse, purge. They are supposed to purge and heal this relationship. Do I think they'll do it in this lifetime? Meh, don't think so. No, they haven't gotten there yet. But I think that's what this Davidson chart ultimately shows, that this is a do-over. This is a past life thing coming in here, and that they were supposed to go through death and rebirth of their relationship and cleanse it. That Virgo needs to cleanse and purify and purge.
Yeah. And
What
to
do you
be
think?
honest, what's very interesting is that Saturn, I completely agree with everything you're saying. And that Saturn, Mars with the nodes opposition is actually a dead on T
Mm,
square to that sun and Neptune. So I can see how there could be a really deep draw and desire to connect with it, but I think without that Aries energy, especially, well, I mean, in here we've got that Aries energy now by with Chiron kind of playing, having played in that territory of working that. I don't know about you, but whenever I see, because when we're talking about a T-score, we're talking about that the Sun is square Mars and Saturn pretty
Oh,
tightly,
yeah. Yeah, that
you know,
means
and that
ultimately they're
brings
not
in the
going to get
nodes.
along.
Yeah, that they're really not going to, that there's going to be power struggles, that even with
Yeah,
this, I mean, I think Saturn rules Aquarius, so it makes it really great. But this is so much ego. That Mars up in the
yeah,
midheaven has to do with ego. And I agree with you. This is another marker I like when I see in an individual charts is where someone's Saturn is on someone's south node. You know this is karmic. You know it's a past life thing. And 99% of the time, the other thing it really implies is something that is really pretty much done. There's
right.
not a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
life force in it to milk out. So it's one of those
right,
things, it's like get the work in and get out. But I do like that the Chiron and Jupiter are trining that sun. I think that is really yummy.
right.
Where we had the Mars and Nessus in
Exactly.
the eighth house, we now have the vertex in Nessus in Gemini, which gives a really, I think, a nicer opportunity for addressing some of the issues. But
Yeah, yeah. And,
again, you know, it deals with consciousness, it deals with what it is. But I mean, if they came in to see me and they were saying, "Hey, what is the likelihood of us having a relationship?" I'd say, how often do you want to come in and see me for couples
right.
counseling? And
Counseling.
because it really is going to be adjusting, Jim, like we talked about earlier on, because the
Yeah.
Mercury is being squared, because their sun's being squared, they have fundamental ways they're looking at life. I mean, if you're sitting at a table and you have
Again,
someone
they're looking at
sitting to
life
your right,
differently.
they look at life it's a whole different perspective, and you're kind of out of the corner of their eye, and squares are that thing that kind of shocks and hits us from out of nowhere, and so it can be really challenging. And sometimes in life we just get tired of having to deal with those sort of situations going on, and we just say, hey, you know what, I want something easier. This,
Yeah.
from all indications that we're seeing, is there's
Not
nothing
easy.
about this
No,
relationship that is easy.
no. And look at any time you got the two malefics, Mars and Saturn, and some type of aspect, even training can bring out a negative aspect in a relationship. And we see here in the Davidson chart, they're opposing. The two malefics are opposing. So yeah, and you know, I know we never hardly talk about it, but that part of fortune there in Libra relationship. This is really, I think, what this two couple, really is supposed to be working on together. Is about relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And um, to be honest, I think she has a bit more capacity
Oh yeah, absolutely.
to
Emotional
delve in these
capacity.
areas. Yes, definitely. Yeah,
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 yeah, definitely.
exactly.
So are they
This
in
is
or
the
out?
only one when I did the AI that actually was so funny because this character came up and I was like, oh, I have to use it even though it's like a bunch of men, you know, but it's like it just looks like him and it's funny because he's in a judge's outfit. So I just had to put it. So is he in or,
He's
and I love
out.
this one.
He's out. No, no.
Yeah.
This is two people that should not be together.
Exactly. They
No,
really,
they would not.
yeah,
If they were married,
yeah,
they would not. I don't think they'd stay
no.
together. No.
I think their benefit is really for the entertainment and pleasure of the rest of us on the planet.
Well, I think what you brought out today, Michael, and what I've talked about, we've shown a lot of things to help people understand relationship and what important planets and asteroids or minor planets we should look at, and how important aspects are and what house it's in and what sign it's in gives you sort of this complexity about how challenges and how people can complement each other in relationship. I think there's a lot. We brought out a lot to help people understand that today.
Definitely. And we want to continue doing this. We'd like to do probably a famous couple every once a month, and then the other time being a couple sending them in. So We would love to have a couple send it in. And if it's your relationship is just beginning, or it's the end of a relationship, or you're going through a challenging time in your relationship, any of those options are easy. You're going to get a really nice in-depth review of your chart, as you can tell. It's just that it's going to be shared with a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So you got to be
Well,
comfortable with that. But
yeah, and we could change the names. And when we talk about
definitely.
relationship, we can also talk about I'm hoping we're going to talk about thruples or triads at some point. We can look at three people, because three people can be in a relationship, or two people in a relationship and a third person's interacting with that. So we can talk about that. And we can also talk about relationship is not, it can also be with an event or your job, or a friend or a business partner. So relationship is a sort of a wide thing that we love to talk about together.
Definitely. And how can people reach you and find out about you?
Best place, like you had on that last slide there, Michael, is my email, justin.elzie@gmail.com. And how about you?
People can reach me at coremichael.com. Thank you all so much. If you like this, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please share with your friends. Please leave comments. Thank you for those who left comments. Thank you for those of you who called me and shared your insights. This is just the
Yep.
beginning. Of course, this is only episode 2. So we've got a little
Dose.
ways to go, or dose exactly. It's here in New Mexico, and finding ways to build on this. So please, give us your feedback, give us your input, and yeah, we're here to be of service and here to have fun. So
Yep. So
please,
we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks with a new relationship.
sounds great. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.